Welcome back to our CBS News election night headquarters. It is just after 8:30 in the East with several key races still up in the air. Let's take a look at the latest results with the votes still coming in. CBS News projects that Democrat Sherelle Parker wins the race for mayor of Philadelphia, and she will become the first female mayor of Philadelphia. And in Rhode Island, the special election for 1st Congressional District, CBS News projects that Gabriel Amo has won that race, and he'll be the state's first elected Black representative to Congress. Two significant contests. And let's check back in Ohio, because the big ballot measure there is a constitutional right to abortion. And at this hour, CBS characterizes this as lean yes. Joining us now is Frank LaRose, Ohio's Secretary of State. Good evening, Mr. Secretary.
Hey, good evening, Nora.
How do you see the numbers at this hour?
Well, listen, we're in the business of reporting the results here. I'm joining you from our Election Night Reporting Center. We have less than 1 million that have been tabulated and reported at this point. That's mostly the early votes and the absentee votes. We're still receiving those votes from the Election Day polling locations. And so we'll be reporting these over the next several hours and making sure that we accurately report what decision Ohioans have made.
And so what percentage of votes are still outstanding?
Oh, gosh, well over 90% at this point. We've seen, like I said, those early and absentee votes have come in. I think the number behind me says that really just a few percent of our Election Day results have been tabulated at this point. So we're just 1 hour after polls close in Ohio. So long way to go still.
Mr. Secretary, I do have to ask you, because 6 states have had abortion on the ballot in the midterms. In all of those, Americans voted to protect abortion rights against these new restrictions. What makes you think that Ohio will vote differently?
Well, the question on the ballot today in Ohio is not simply a question of abortion rights. If this passes, it'll be the most extreme abortion law perhaps anywhere in the country, allowing abortion all the way up through the end of pregnancy, taking away the rights of parents to have a say in the decisions that their children make. We've been making the case that it's just too extreme for a state like Ohio, and I hope and pray that the voters will see it that way as well.
Mm-hmm. And do you believe that healthcare providers who provide an abortion in Ohio should face penalties and perhaps criminal prosecution?
Well, that's not a part of what we're talking about here today. The question that's on the ballot says that can a healthcare provider, in this case the abortionist, make the decision of what's in the health interest of that patient? And again, that's a decision that a patient should make with her provider. But, again, the question of criminal penalties is not really on the table here.
But in the 6-week ban, it is part of. There are criminal penalties for a healthcare provider who does provide an abortion.
Well, sure. If you violate the law, there are penalties for that. That's why we have laws. Laws that aren't enforced are just suggestions.
Mm-hmm. So if this constitutional amendment passes tonight, will Ohio Republicans pass a law to prevent abortions after what's called fetal viability, which is around the 23rd or 24th week?
Well, this is the problem with legislating via constitutional amendment. The Constitution is obviously the supreme law of the state. And if this constitutional amendment were to pass tonight, it would supersede whatever the legislature would do. That's what is so problematic about this. But again, that's yet to be foreseen.
So what do you expect your Republican Party to do if it does pass?
Well, I can tell you that as somebody who cares about protecting life, that we want to do what we can to protect life in Ohio. But again, once a constitutional amendment's in place, it's very difficult for the legislature to do anything about that.
All right, Secretary of State Frank LaRose, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck tonight. I know it's a busy night, certainly for everyone that works in your office in counting these ballots.
Thanks, Nora.
Joining us now is Dr. Catherine Romanos. She is a family doctor in Columbus, Ohio, and a supporter of Issue 1. Doctor, good to have you. Any response to anything that the Secretary of State just said?
I think there are a lot of things that Secretary of State Frank LaRose just said that continue to propagate misinformation about this bill. This bill is about returning healthcare authority and autonomy to a patient and their provider. As an abortion provider in Ohio, I provide safe, evidence-based care, and I hope that tonight I will be informed that I'll be able to do so going forward.
And how have current restrictions limited the ability of doctors to provide care to women in the state of Ohio?
You know, currently we operate under a litany of laws that really make it a lot harder to access abortion in Ohio, and in many cases make it even less safe for a patient to access abortion in Ohio. We have waiting periods, we have mandatory information that we have to give to patients, we have ambulatory surgical facility requirements and transfer requirements, all things that the legislature has put in place to try and create more barriers in access to care. What we want tonight is to be able to take down those barriers and just talk to our patients and give them the care that they need.
What will this mean if this constitutional amendment passes?
You know, as a provider in Ohio, I've gotten very used to not providing the best care possible. I know a patient doesn't need to wait 24 hours to make an important decision when they're ready to make that decision. And I've, for a long time, had to follow the law and provide care that I think is substandard. Last year, after Dobbs, I was even forced to abandon my patients and turn them away. Even though I am technically and physically capable of providing care, I did tell them I wasn't allowed to take care of them. I'm hopeful if issue 1 passes, I will never again have to look a patient in the eye and tell them that I'm not allowed to provide them the health care that they need.
Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, so for example, there was about 90 days after the Dobbs decision last year when our 6-week ban went into effect. And it was arbitrary. A patient would come for their first visit on a Monday, and by Tuesday we would detect cardiac activity, and I would have to tell them we could no longer take care of them, that they would have to leave the state or continue the pregnancy that they weren't ready to continue. And it was demoralizing to know that I had spent my entire career training to be able to take care of people, and I wasn't allowed to. And turning those people away was heartbreaking.
Did you have a question? Oh, Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.